It's Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. Don't look now, but the DOJ is doing stuff. President Trump answers my question on the royal visit, and one of the most exceptional 3 minutes you'll ever hear from the floor of Congress, next on the AM Update. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche made this announcement yesterday. James Comey, former FBI director, has been indicted yet again.
Today, a grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of North Carolina returned an indictment against James Comey on 2 counts. The first count is that on or about May 15th of last year, he knowingly and willfully making a threat to take the life of and to inflict bodily harm upon the President of the United States. Count 2. Same day, May 15th, 2025, that the defendant, James Comey, knowingly and willfully transmitting in interstate commerce a communication that contained a threat to kill the President of the United States. Both of these counts carry a maximum term of imprisonment of 10 years. So I think it's fair to say that threatening the life of anybody is dangerous.
There is Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, the Department of Justice, announcing yet again former FBI Director James Comey indicted for that Trump 8647, which is a code for kill the 47th president of the United States. He was already indicted, or at least investigated over this. He is being indicted yet again. So there is first of the recurring theme on this morning's AM update. President Trump on Truth Social says he's got a priority for congressional Republicans. Quote, America's elections are rigged, stolen, and laughingstock all over the world. We're either going to fix them or we won't have a country any longer. The Save America Act, who knows whether or not that's got any legs left. I've seen a clip going viral from many different accounts I follow this week of John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, talking about how, we might not be able to do the standing filibuster. I've seen this clip passed around everywhere. People don't understand. I think that clip is like from last month or from February. So there's no real news on the SAVE Act, or the Save America Act as it's sometimes referred to. That's its old version. That's its old name. Nevertheless, though, the absence of any real action that really gets the Republican base going doesn't seem to be reflected. Doesn't seem to be reflected in a lot of the generic ballot polls we've been seeing recently. The most recent one, a Harvard-Harris poll found in this midterm election year, amongst likely voters, the congressional ballot is tied 50-50. In the most recent, that's a Harvard-Harris poll. So despite the fact that Republicans in the Senate especially seem to be hell-bent on not doing anything to excite or deliver for their base, it seems like, at least as of now, in the middle of April, it's not really in the polls anyway. Who knows what real life is like, but in the polls anyway, that doesn't seem to be reflected. The second, I told you this would be a recurring theme, the second in our recurring theme this morning, Department of Justice yesterday indicted David Morens, former senior advisor to Anthony Fauci, accusing him of concealing records during investigations into the origins of COVID-19. In a statement, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, you just heard from, said, quote, these allegations against this former Fauci advisor, these allegations represent a profound abuse of trust at a time when the American people needed it the most during the height of a global pandemic. As alleged in the indictment, Dr. Morens and his co-conspirators deliberately concealed information and falsified records in an effort to suppress alternative theories regarding the origins of COVID-19. Government officials have a solemn duty to provide honest, well-grounded facts and advice in the service of the public interest. Back in 2024, David Morens, this Fauci advisor, and the name kind of sounded familiar to me when I heard this news come down yesterday morning. He actually testified in front of, I believe it was the Senate. He also testified in front of the House panel. That's what you're going to hear here. And he was asked specifically whether he deleted any government documents.
Ever delete or attempt to delete a federal record?
No, but let me explain why. When I came there in 1998, we were instructed to delete emails or to move them into PST files frequently because they jammed the computer.
So there's David Morens, the man who's been indicted now, the former Fauci top advisor, being indicted for concealing, covering up, destroying, obstructing government records. And you heard that soundbite from that hearing in 2024, where he was asked point blank, hey, did you ever destroy, cover up, try to get around any Freedom of Information Act requirements? And he said, no, But that's not a good sign. But then he went in to say, what? I was instructed to do so for many years, ever since I've been at NIAID. That was Fauci's branch of the NIH. That dude sounds like he's about to sing a song or three. Moving on to developments in the Middle East. Huge one yesterday, kind of out of the blue, but it's not surprising when you think about it a little bit. The United Arab Emirates said this week it's going to leave OPEC effective May 1st. That's just on Friday, stripping the oil cartel of its third largest producer and further weakening its leverage over global oil supplies and prices. The UAE's decision had been rumored as a possibility for some time as it pushed back in recent years against OPEC production quotas it felt had been too low, meaning it wasn't able to sell as much oil as it wanted to. Regional politics are also likely at play, those politics being, of course, the fact that another OPEC member, another OPEC nation, has been firing missiles and rockets at UAE for quite some time, a couple of months now. So that could have something to do with it. Now, I've seen some people say they've got a pipeline that basically bypasses the Strait of Hormuz. That's all well and good. And if it were not already going at full capacity because of OPEC production restrictions, that could have an impact on prices. That doesn't really matter because as I understand that pipeline that the United Arab Emirates has that basically bypasses the Strait of Hormuz into the broader Gulf, that's already running at capacity. However, if and when the situation with the Strait of Hormuz resolves, then the UAE, that's the third largest producer of oil in OPEC, that could have major ramifications on energy prices around the globe. But that's going to be further down the line, I think. And we'll talk more about this Strait of Hormuz matter right now, as this might be usually canary in the coal mine is a term that's necessarily a bad thing. Canary dying in a coal mine, that's usually a bad thing. Whatever the positive version of this, light at the end of the tunnel, light at the end of the coal mine, this might be it. It might be it. I don't know. It might be it. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social yesterday, Iran has just informed us that they are in a state of collapse. They want us to open this Hormuz Strait as soon as possible as they try to figure out their leadership situation, which I believe they will be able to do. They say they want us. That's according to Donald Trump. They want us to open up the Hormuz Strait, or Strait of Hormuz, or Straits of Hormuz, not to be confused with the Gay of Hormuz. So that's just one random post from Donald Trump popping off on Truth Social, right? Well, there's also this. Analysts tracking shipping around the Strait of Hormuz are reporting it appears the first laden liquefied natural gas carrier escaped while the first Japanese very large container ship also made a first transit, raising some hopes that at least a few ships might be able to make the passage. I looked into this story a little bit more. This is from an outlet called the Maritime Executive. I first heard about the Japanese ship that made it through the Strait of Hormuz yesterday morning. Apparently, there's another LNG ship that made it through yesterday as well. They didn't use the path that Iran had been forcing vessels to use. They used the traditional lane. Again, my analysis of this is oil prices in the oil markets, because those markets have everything basically priced in. They have better intelligence than the news outlets that any of you or I probably have access to. So that's kind of my analysis on how this geopolitical shift is going. But maybe, just maybe, don't want to make any broad proclamations, maybe a couple of pretty huge oil tankers, or in this case, LNG tankers, made it through the strait yesterday. That's something to keep an eye on. I mentioned this at the top of the show, top of the episode. President Trump, as if he was listening to me, provided an explanation, at least on one facet of what I said yesterday. Why does anybody care about this royal visit from the king of a country that we defeated 250 years ago for our independence? Why do we care about a royal visit? Well, I asked a question, especially given the fact that it was we're celebrating our 250th this year. President Trump made the case yesterday during the official ceremony to welcome the king and queen of London, no, of the United Kingdom.
Honoring the British king might seem an ironic beginning to our celebration of 250 years of American independence, but in fact, no tribute could be more appropriate. Long before Americans had a nation or a constitution, We first had a culture, a character, and a creed. Before we ever proclaimed our independence, Americans carried within us the rarest of gifts, moral courage, and it came from a small but mighty kingdom from across the sea. For nearly 2 centuries before the revolution, this land was settled and forged by men, women who bore in their souls the blood and noble spirit of the British. Here on a wild and untamed continent, they set loose the ancient English love of liberty and the Great Britain's distinctive sense of glory, destiny, and pride. And that's what it is, glory.
Okay, fine. I'll allow it. I'm not going to cover this in breathless, unending codicils and syllables. But I think from a civilizational and shared heritage aspect, President Trump made a pretty good case for at least why the King and King of England are here on the nation's 250th birthday. I'll allow it. I'll allow it. Those are some nice words. When we come back, the final installment of the recurring theme of today's episode. Also, just keeping score at home, I'll have an update on that as well. And one of the most exceptional things you'll ever hear from the floor of Congress, that's coming up next. A long-running investigation of fraud involving federal funding in Minnesota entered a new and highly visible stage this week. Tuesday morning, uniformed law enforcement agents executed search warrants in the Minneapolis area. 22 federal search warrants were executed in Minnesota, including raids at daycares, businesses, and homes. One of those businesses, one of those daycares, was the Quality Leering Center. Agents were seen entering and exiting that quote-unquote business. The raids dealt with allegations of fraud. It's according to the Department of Homeland Security. The operation involved the FBI, several other federal agencies, state and local law enforcement. That's according to the Justice Department. So, we're doing search warrants. We're doing raids to try to find maybe the bottom, or at least the start of the bottom, of the fraud in Minnesota now. One of 3 stories that dropped just yesterday alone. And for those of you keeping score at home, credit to End Wokeness on X for this post. Since Pam Bondi left as Attorney General, the Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted for sending fraudulent funding to the KKK. That Fauci advisor was charged with concealing evidence, concealing federal records, destroying federal records to cover up the lab leak hypothesis. Somalian fraudulent daycares allegedly raided in Minnesota. Comey has been charged, indicted again for that threat to kill President Trump. A handful of rogue prosecutors, this was a story recently as well, have been fired. And the firing squad has been reinstated as capital punishment, at least an option for capital punishment for federal death row. What was Pam Bondi doing? This Todd Blanche guy, I was told, and maybe this is all one immaculate ruse to try to gain some trust in the West Wing before they maybe nominate Todd Blanche to serve as, full-time Attorney General. I was told this Todd Blanche guy was worse than Pam Bondi. I don't know. Seems like things are going. It just seems like there's some life in the Department of Justice right now. Just some life for once. Let's get to this. Congressman Brandon Gill of the state of Texas. He produced what I believe is one of the most exceptional and astounding 3 minutes you'll ever hear on the floor of Congress yesterday. He was questioning a so-called expert, a leading expert on women's reproductive health, which is just a convenient term for baby killing. Miss Waters is her name. It's immaterial. She's one of a hydra. But Congressman Brandon Gill went there and produced, I think, one of the most astounding and exceptional 3 minutes you'll ever hear from the floor of Congress.
You're an advocate for abortion, for abortion policy. What's your favorite type of abortion?
I am an advocate for patients having access to the full realm of reproductive health care.
But do you have a preferred method of abortion that you like?
I do not.
Let me read through a couple different methods, and I want to get your take on how much you like these. The first type is called a suction abortion. This is when the cervix is dilated and a strong suction, 29 times the power of a household vacuum cleaner, tears the baby's body apart and sucks it through the hose into a container. Do you prefer that method?
I stand by my former testimony.
That sounds kind of gross, doesn't it? Sounds pretty gruesome. Do you agree? It does to me.
I stand by how I answered your question fully and accurately.
Okay, what about this one? This one is called dilation and curettage. After dilation of the cervix, a sharp looped knife is inserted into the uterus. The baby's body is cut into pieces and extracted, often by suction. Do you prefer that method?
What I believe we are here to talk about today is the FACE Act. We are not here to talk about the legality of
I'm asking you, you're a pro-abortion
abortion.
advocate. I'm asking if you prefer the dilation and curettage method.
I am a access to reproductive health care advocate.
You don't want to talk about abortion itself. Why is that?
I would prefer to talk about the reason that the committee called the hearing.
Is it because it's uncomfortable to talk about?
I would prefer
It should be uncomfortable.
I would prefer, if you would let me finish my statement, to talk about the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, which is what I was asked to come
what that
here
access
to talk about.
gets. How about this one? It's called dilation and evacuation. Forceps are inserted into the uterus, grabbing and twisting the baby's body to dismember him or her. If the head is too large, it must be crushed in order to remove it. Do you prefer that method?
I would prefer to talk about the reason the hearing was called and the basis of my expert testimony.
It's uncomfortable to hear this, isn't it? It is. I think it is, because it's barbaric and evil. How about this one? It's called the saline injection. It's when a 20% salt solution is injected through the mother's abdomen into the baby's amniotic fluid. The baby's skin is burned off. The baby ingests the solution and dies of salt poisoning, dehydration, and hemorrhaging of the brain. Do you prefer that method?
I would prefer to talk about the subject of the hearing.
This is the subject of the hearing. This is about protests outside of abortion clinics. I'm asking you about abortion.
I stand by my prior testimony.
Okay. I wouldn't want to talk about this either if I were you, because it is barbaric and evil.
So why doesn't your congressman or woman who runs maybe as a pro-lifer, maybe even pro-life is part of their platform, why don't they at the very least do things like this? There are times when rhetoric is just rhetoric. It's just sound of, it's full of sound and fury signifying nothing. And then there's time where it's extremely, extremely necessary to break through some of the terminology, some of the political correctness, if you want to call it, some of the euphemisms. There's a reason why I brought this up to introduce this topic. This expert witness, Jessica Waters is her name. I've never heard of her. She's an expert witness on women's reproductive health. What does that actually mean? Well, it's a euphemism. It's not really what it sounds like. What it really means is the 3 minutes you heard there from Representative Brandon Gill. Let's just be honest here. You want to have a hearing about women's reproductive health. You want to have a hearing about that. Well, let's define what that actually means. It means baby killing. If you're here as an expert for this, an advocate for this, which you have admitted you are, Miss Waters, you must have a favorite method of baby killing. Let's talk about that. Here's one method. Here's the second method. Here's the third method. Here's the fourth method. And each time she says, I prefer to talk about something else. I prefer to talk about something else. I prefer to talk something different. It's because these euphemisms are euphemisms for a reason. The pro-baby killing platform, if they were truly honest and explicit, as you heard Brandon Gill get there, if they were truly honest and explicit about what women's reproductive health actually means, they would win far fewer elections. Although in this day and age, because we have let this culture get paganized to the point where it is, they wouldn't lose every election, but they would They would win far fewer if they were actually honest and explicit about what they're actually talking about and advocating for. This is instructive. Because when you can strip away the euphemisms, the political correctness, and actually do the exposing for what it is, you're starting to win back control of language. And whoever controls language will control and eventually win the debate. And that's what efforts like what you heard from Brandon Gill there, that's the practical implication. I pray we have more and more representatives. Think about this. If you ever tempted to blackpill, go back and look whatever the congressional makeup was in 2006. Can you imagine any one of those people, whoever was serving in the House of Representatives in 2006, a Republican in the House of Representatives in 2006, 20 years ago? Can you imagine any one of those members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, giving a dress down like this? And it wasn't to own the libs. It was to serve a broader purpose, a higher purpose. Let's strip away the euphemisms. Let's talk about what's really going on here. Now, what's really going on when it comes to the midterms? I asked you that this week on our poll of the week. You can vote in it over at Real AM Update on X. Look for the pinned post. Our poll of the week. What is the outcome? What is the outcome of the midterm elections? We'll talk about that coming up tomorrow, and the news of the day as always. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Back at it again then. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.